My name is Michael Gira, and this is an enterprise called Records in My Life.
Like one of the first records you've ever heard that piqued your interest?
Well, I don't recall the name of it, but it would have been a Walt Disney record. Something about Brer Rabbit, and it was a very cinematic kind of record in that it had sound effects and music and a narrative, and it was sort of a audio film. And that's had a last, that, I don't have the record now, but that and records like South Pacific that my parents had kind of inspired me to think about music as cinema, or as a sort of quasi-visual experience. And I've attempted to approach that on several records as a sort of producer. But the first record I think I purchased or had my parents purchase was probably Chubby Checker's The Twist. And I don't know what year that would have been, maybe 62 or something. And then, of course, I bought all the Beatles records when they came out. And I had Beatle boots, and I even wore a Beatle wig, I recall. But when things got a little darker, both in my life and culturally, the first record that actually meant something to me, and still I find to be engaging, is the Doors' first album. The Doors' first two albums, I think, are absolutely wonderful to this day.
Was that the self-titled one? Sorry, it's called. Or...
Yeah, the first one is self-titled, yeah, and the second one is Strange Days.
Right.
And they're just beautifully. I can listen to them now from a person, from the point of view of a person with experience. The production is incredible. I'm sure they were in the studio for no more than a week or something, but it's just really sensual and expansive and beautiful, and the performances are great. The dynamics of the long songs are stunning. The musicianship, his singing is unparalleled. I heard one of those YouTube things people put up. It was the voice sounds the music. I heard that of Crystal Ship lately, and it's just orgasmic. It's so beautiful and dark and also sensual and kind of yearning. It captures perfectly that time in Southern California where I grew up, engaging in various substances, particularly LSD, and the kind of expansive notion of the sun and the beach and the water, but also with this dark undercurrent that was flowing through that whole time, and in me, certainly. So, those two records have lasted the longest of any, really. At that time, also, I would have been a aficionado of the first three Mothers of Invention records. Let's see, it was Freak Out, Absolutely Free, and We're Only in It for the Money. Those were, in a way, punk rock in attitude.
It was pretty experimental for the time.
Yeah, but they're also very caustic and sarcastic about American society and about the counterculture. And I thought they were great. So I guess those are sort of two of series of pivotal records from my childhood that kind of have lingered. There was a whole series of events, more than just records, that I have to wind back. In the early 70s, I used to rehearse with no goal in mind with a friend of mine. Just thought he played guitar and I sang to the Rolling Stones, to what would have been the record at that time, Exile on Main Street, and also Sticky Fingers. And then I went to art school and I forgot about all that shit. And then when I was in art school, punk rock happened. And I just seized on that as an absolutely amazing cultural vector that was undeniable. It was so powerful and emotional and just right for the times. It was basically throwing consumer society back on itself in its nihilistic fashion and just saying, unacceptable. But it kind of took on the trappings of the shallowness and the nihilism of consumer culture and threw it back at you. But musically too, it was just utterly immediate and great, and that made me want to start a band. But the records I would have been listening to then would have been Suicide and Stooges and probably uncharacteristically Kraftwerk and Bowie's records of that time, and Roxy Music and Brian Eno, and just the more kind of forward-looking stuff. Somehow all that congealed in my mind, and I started Swans, and it, ended up being what it is.
And is there a record which you're really digging?
You mean a contemporary record?
Yeah, contemporary if possible.
No, there are no contemporary records that I'm digging. That's only because, caveat is that I have been touring incessantly, or either touring or in the studio incessantly for 7 years now, with very little time off, and my ears are exhausted. And when I do listen to music, I listen to it quietly, as you might imagine, and it's not contemporary music.
Okay, so what other album someone introduced you to that was made like a while back that you have learned about, that you've learned recently, and you are
a contemporary piece of music?
It can be from any time, something that you maybe discovered recently.
Something that's worth listening.
Yeah, we want like a recommendation for us.
Oh, well, it's definitely not contemporary. It would be Charlemagne Palestine's strumming music. And that's from the 60s, I believe, late 60s. It's very obscure, unfortunately. He's a composer. It's more like his performance is the composition, but he's a minimalist, maximalist. He calls himself a minimalist maximalist. But on this particular record, he is seated between two grand pianos. I don't know if they're Steinways, but something highfalutin. And he's playing arpeggios with both hands. I think it's just C minor or something. And gradually he adds notes to the arpeggios and plays more and more intensely. And I guess he moves up and down the keyboard a little bit. And it's just this gradual build of tones. If you've ever sat down and played a piano, and just even if you don't play it like I have, and you just become engaged with the sheer sound of it, so that's sort of what he's doing, but in a very tutored musical way. And the thing just slowly builds and builds and builds, and you realize about halfway through the 1 hour piece of music that more preponderant in the sound and the notes is these waves of angels, which are the harmonics that he's created. It's just, in fact, the arpeggiations sink and kind of disappear in these rolling waves of beautiful harmonics. It's a tremendous performance and recording. Okay?